Okay, so we're gonna go next into our next plenary session. Um, I would like to introduce the moderator who would be taking care of that. Um, she is a gorgeous looking woman who I just met. And of course, Randy Hooker by name. She is an operations strategist, leadership expert, and founder of Help Consultant Services, known as the Business Operation Doctor. By the way, that's trademark, so think twice about it. She specializes in helping organizations transform vision into measurable execution through operational strategy, leadership development, and scalable system. She's also an AIM Knowledge Partner where she contributes her expertise to developing entrepreneurs, leadership businesses, and professionals through educational programs designed to foster sustainable growth and leadership excellence. And need I also ask, hat to it, I think she's also a fashionista because it takes a lot for you to be able to do a pretty good blend of colors and still come out looking stunning. Please join me as I welcome Randy Hooker, your next moderator.
Thank you. Thank you. Is this working? Great. Okay. So I have the distinguished honor to be on a panel to help moderate. But first, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So, State Representative Marvin Lynn, who's coming up. He is a House District 98 and has built a distinguishing career in civil rights and securities law. He has dedicated most of his career to serving the immigrants and refugee communities. Thank you. And then while advancing equality and justice through public service, he is a graduate of Emory University and Yale Law School. He continues to use his legal expertise and legislative leadership to strengthen communities and expand opportunities across Georgia. Let's give a round of applause for Senator Lynn.
Thank you.
All right, we have State Representative Gabe, and I'm not even going to butcher your name, Gabe. So I'm going to bring you the mic while you come up, and I apologize, but okay. See, I didn't want to butcher it. I didn't want to butcher it. You got to come up this way. You got to come up anyway. He is the state representative of House District 102 for the Georgia House of Representatives, a business executive, engineer, and public servant. He brings extensive experience in business leadership, community development, and legislative service. Through his work as a House Representative, he has championed initiatives that support economic development and growth, strengthen local communities, and improve opportunities for families and businesses. Please give it up for State Representative Gabe. And our next panelist, Adriana, is she here? Okay, there you go. She is an international attorney, a mediator, and immigrant advocate for decades of experience in legal services, public relations, and community engagement. As the president of the Binational Group, she has collaborated with law firms, government agencies, and businesses communities across the United States and Mexico. Her career has been dedicated to supporting immigrant communities, promoting civic engagement, and building strong partnerships that advance inclusion, justice, and cross-cultural collaboration. Please give it up for our panelists for this session. All righty. Thank you, everybody, for attending our session. So our session about how power works, understanding and shaping the systems around us focuses about how policies and institutions impact African immigrant communities across many areas. With that, the first question I'll ask you guys is many immigrants interact with systems across schools, healthcare, criminal justice, small business regulation, and immigration. Which of these systems do you believe has the greatest impact on the African immigrant communities today and why? That's loaded. I know. Who wants to jump in first?
And they're looking at the one in the middle.
They are. They are. They are.
All right. Let me start by saying that every one of those that you've just enumerated is important. Every one of them is very important. But we live in a capitalistic society, America. Therefore, I want to emphasize on small business because many Africans, immigrants here, and Caribbeans and other immigrants, they venture into businesses. They're not afraid. They venture into businesses. And it is important because in this country, you need money. Simple, right? If you have money, you can send your children to good school. Just name all those items you listed. If you have money, you can take care of most of. If you have money, you can. If you're having immigration issues, you can hire the best lawyers. Adriana is here, so she would know, and they will get you out of it. And when you don't, it is a problem. And because most immigrants go into business, it is important that we look at how we can help them to succeed. But let me also make a general statement. It is very difficult to isolate a group and legislate for them. You make, Marvin would know that, you make your policies for everyone. Yes, sometimes it may be for everyone, but it will benefit some people more. But you don't go in saying, I want to do a legislation for me. So small businesses.
Alright.
Thank you.
I'm going to go off that, and I very much agree with that. And I'll make it slightly broader. I'll talk about the economy. As Representative McCoy stated, we are in a capitalistic society. And you mentioned in my intro, I've worked a lot with refugees. One of my first jobs out of college was indeed working with Catholic Charities, one of the institutions here in Atlanta that places refugees and some asylees and some immigrants who are not refugees to become self-sufficient. And if you don't know, I'm sure some of you definitely know, that traditional longstanding policy of America with refugees is we give you public benefits for 6 months. Therefore, you have 6 months to achieve self-sufficiency. And so many times these are, these are refugees uh, escaping often war-torn conditions, and so many of them, to become self-sufficient, people, and particularly women who come from very patriarchal societies who have never had to work, they have to work while balancing their family, their children, and do that in 6 months to become self-sufficient. So think of every barrier along the way for that, because you don't have to be a refugee to think through sufficiency. As Representative McCoy says, this is a capitalistic society. And so when we're thinking about how power works and understanding the systems around us, we think through, let's take the example of small businesses. And I told Miss Deirdre Cock I was going to name check her today, because we were sitting down with Aisha DeBerry. She's the Access and Opportunity Officer for Gwinnett last fall, and we were thinking about how hard it is for small businesses, first of all, at any stage. But we were thinking through there at the state level, there's a state small business tax credit specifically for minority, veteran, and women-owned businesses. And I pulled it up. I was like, what's the difficulty? And we found out technically the credit was invalid because they weren't defining small businesses. And it had been that case for 2 years. Now people are still getting their credits, but we ended up working with the governor's office to change that. But think through that, like, people are being impacted by this or have struggling with accessing a good policy. And I also would urge us to think we do need more resources, but there are so many resources out there that in small business land, job land, every area that you mentioned, that is difficult for people to access precisely because of how the system is shaped. And so oftentimes people like us, I mean, we've been part of the legislature for more than 2 years. We didn't know. And so those are some of the difficulties, but I think so much of it is the economy and self-sufficiency, and that goes to every program that you might need to access, even if you're not a refugee, even if you're not an immigrant.
Adriana?
They're being American by choice for 25 years. I'm continue fighting not to believe that money is everything. I think there are things that money cannot buy. And you can have a successful business because if you get cancer, the health is the most important thing. If you have a lot of money or you're an attorney or whatever, and you're irregular in this country and you get deportation, doesn't matter how much money you have. You don't qualify, you don't qualify. So I think every single thing that you mentioned, it's just together. Nothing has more impact or less impact. I think here everything is important, and the unity with the family, the values, the proud to come from another country and be successful in a country that give you too many opportunities because too many barriers. We're beginning, every single immigrant that I saw, they're beginning to facing problems with immigration. And then we need to find out work. And then they need to have a house. And then we have children, and then we involved with the school system and PTAs. And then we're beginning to vote. And then you get sick and you need to go to see a doctor. And what I saw with the African community that I admire is that the preparation, the studies, the the professionalism in the health system, which marked a very, very, very big difference with the Hispanic community. That the Hispanics have a lack of education, they cannot speak English, And most of the people that I know who come from Africa or any country of Africa, most of them they speak English. And I admire that. And I think values, moral, and unity is more important than anything else. Because if you have a good heart, you will find a way to get out with any problem.
Those are good. Those are all good points. And you touched on something, Senator Lynn, and so, sorry, Representative Lynn. Policies are often abstract. And so people don't always understand them. You don't always get them, but they impact our daily lives. As you just mentioned, the one about the small business tax credit. So can you share an example of a policy that significantly changed the outcomes, either positively or negative, for people in your communities?
Yes. So there are so many examples as we've all alluded to, but I can think of one, and I kind of alluded to it earlier. So Medicaid. We have a lot of folks that benefit very much from Medicaid, and this is in a state that has not expanded Medicaid. It is our opinion that it should be expanded, right? But just taking people who already theoretically have access to it. So first of all, in 2025, under our current administration, a lot of that has changed. There are additional work requirements. There are not even work requirements, but verification requirements. And so that automatically just makes things harder. Like, even if every single person qualifies for this theoretically, the bureaucracy we put in front of people, whether it's justified or not, ultimately makes it harder for people to access this very important policy. To Adriana's point about health, that's one of the main ways people get health care in our country, including and especially immigrants and African immigrants. Um, and so the we have already seen so many people no longer qualify for Medicaid, but it is also not specific to the 2025 and the policy, because we saw it 2 years earlier when after during the pandemic, they allowed you to not have to re-verify or determine that you still qualified for Medicaid. So there was automatic carryover eligibility. When that stopped, we saw so many people get off the rolls again. And I want to keep emphasizing this, even if they qualify. Whatever bureaucracy we put in front of people, even if it's justified, just makes it harder. So I wanted to say that point, not even because it's the most important, although it's very important, but because so much of what I see, even just this morning, I got, it was not an African immigrant, but it was an immigrant who is now a citizen. They are on tough times. And they were asking, well, like, how do I get qualify for this? How do I get on WIC? Which, by the way, WIC is, regardless of your status, you qualify for WIC, but they didn't know that. And then, how do I fill out the paperwork? And just such feeling of overwhelmingness that even, when we took a step back and essentially did intake, it was like, okay, you have some hope here. You qualify for XYZ. The feeling of like, this is overwhelming. And even if I do qualify, it's hard. And there are inevitably some things that you should qualify for, in my opinion, that you don't. I think Medicaid is a perfect example of that. And again, I keep going back to the theme. That's how the systems around us are shaped, and that determines a lot of who gets what and who doesn't get.
Me?
Yes. The other state representative, please.
Okay. I'm gonna try to give you two examples. One positive and the other negative. Starting with the negative one. Birthright citizenship. We don't know what the court is going to do. It is something that we need to be aware of. And I picked this one because it affects the immigrant community, period. I have so many friends of mine who were well off in Nigeria, and whenever their wife got pregnant, they came over here. to give birth. They do that quite often. It's not Nigeria alone. So many other countries do that, right? Now, if the court rules badly, is that a good term to use, badly?
Badly.
I think this should be terribly, really. You know, um, that will no longer be the case. If your parents are not legally here and they give birth, then you're not a citizen, right? Can you imagine what that would do? And there's one that just went against countries like Haiti and a few other countries, the temporary protection that's been taken away, which means many of them may have to be deported back to Haiti or their countries of origin. All right. So these negatively impact the immigrant communities. Now, one that is positive, though the incidents I saw was all happened to all blacks. This was where um if you go to do any business with the uh, clerk of court's office, title, deeds. Previously, they didn't ask you for any ID. They were actually prohibited from asking you for ID. So some scrupulous people took advantage of that. They would go there and take your title and change it, and sometimes they will use information there to take a second mortgage on your house that you know nothing about, right? And in some cases, they'd sell your house and you don't even know that until the new owners come to send you away. I saw one couple, 77-year-old man and his wife. They've owned their house for 40 years. Their furniture was by the roadside. The woman was there crying. You couldn't see the man because he refused to leave his house, but was arrested and put in jail, right? Because the new owner had proper documentation. Well, when I saw that, it was all happening to blacks. Eric Clark, who owned his house for 20 years, was just taken away from it. So, with the help of people like Representative Lim and other um, legislators, they passed a bill I proposed, which now makes it tough for such frauds to happen anymore. So your houses are protected. So that is the positive one.
Alrighty. Adriana, for you, immigration policy often dominates a lot of discussion nowadays, especially with the practices and laws that are happening. But what's a conversation that you see that should be happening more that is not happening?
The most important for me is the division that these ideas and these policies are creating in our society. I think to dividing us in groups and putting us ones against others. I think that is one of the most important and notable things that are happening. And we are not talking about whites versus blacks, blacks versus Hispanics, Hispanics versus everybody else. And I think the diversity is what this country uh, needs to be proud of and not to be criticized all around the world. I think the way that the world is watching the United States right now is affecting our economy, is affecting our sleeping habits, is affecting everybody. And the way that they are not respect the main law of the United States, the Constitution of the United States, the basic human rights is something that is impacting me the most. If you cannot be safe in your own house, if you cannot express yourself, say what you think, your freedom of speech, your freedom of mobility, and you are afraid in a country that is one of the most powerful countries in the world, then something is wrong. And the worst part that is nobody is talking about it. Everybody's afraid. And we need to speak out. And we saw people walking on the streets in California, here in Atlanta, participating and speak about it. and fighting for our rights. Because if we're not doing it, very soon we will beginning to be in cages, all of us. And like the last panel says, it's not about the color of our skin. It's about the economy. It's like what is happening right now with immigration, the deportation. In the beginning, I was thinking is discrimination. And I put the shirt of discrimination. I say why they are discriminating the Hispanics and the immigrants. And no, when I find out that every single immigrant who get detained and get in process to get deported is making somebody rich. It's like a $400 a day. I mean, maybe if they stay in the Holiday Inn, it will be less expensive for us. And why they need to wait 2 or 3 months to be deported? If the foreign countries are saying, we're welcome our citizens. And one of the other side of the coin, they are getting deported, and in 2-3 months they will coming back because it's a need. It's a need for them to looking for a better life, and it's a need for the United States to have a cheap, hard workers. So this is something that hurt me as a person, because to see people being used as an economic pieces for political issue, like, abortion, immigrants, it's always coming through the table. So we really need to think about what we need to do, what we need to say, and when, and why we cannot be quiet. We have examples in history like Nazi Germany. A lot of people just be quiet. A lot of people see things happen and nobody say anything. And history will be hard for what is happening right now in the United States.
Okay. I think what I'm going to say is a cousin to what she just said. What we haven't been talking much about, or the question is, how should I or we get involved? When you get involved, you may actually be able to solve some of these problems, but you have to get involved first. Let me. I'm going to use myself to illustrate how getting involved can be beneficial. Nigeria, my country of origin, they have 3 major ethnic groups. There are so many, but I'm just talking about the 3. Which one is Igbo? There are thousands of Igbo people here. I got involved in my community, and before long, I was elected chairman of the Igbo people here, right? So I served them. From there, they used to have what they called the Nigerian League. I got involved. I also served as their president. And then I ultimately was elected chairman of Nigerians in diaspora for the 2 continents of America. We have one organization that bound the 2 continents, from Brazil to Canada. I was elected their chairperson. After that, I moved on. I was elected the chairman of the Democratic Party in this county, Gwinnett County, right? And here I am today. Oh, I forgot that I also served in the Municipal Planning Commission of this county. So when I ride around, I can tell you the history of some structures that we see. Today, I am a legislator just because I got involved. I just gave an example of a bill that I was able to pass to stop fraudulent sales of people's homes. I would not have done it if I was not in this position, because I got involved. I am able to do some of these things. And because you will get involved, you will be able. Can you imagine a situation where we get involved, and it's happening actually in our legislature? We have people from different backgrounds coming in. I've lived in Gwinnett County for about 30 years. I knew when you get certain looks when you go into a restaurant, for instance, right? It has all changed because we are getting involved. When I was elected party chairman, Gwinnett was ruby red politically. But when I was running, I told them I was going to turn it blue. People laughed at me. They thought I was a stupid, foolish guy. But they made the mistake. They voted for me. And guess what? I proceeded to turn Gwinnett blue. That is why people like me, my colleague here, We have United Nations in our Gwinnett delegation today, right? Exactly. Getting involved. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Because it will help us. Can you imagine a room where decisions are being made and it's all immigrants sitting down to make those decisions? Are we going to cut our heads off? Thank you. And that's my point.
And can I just briefly add
Yeah,
to that?
Representative.
So another cousin for that is the question was what's not being talked about enough. I want to pose that part of the challenge is we're not talking to each other enough and we're not talking across groups. Whenever people care about immigration, I don't use the word challenge, but I basically challenge them, well, have you talked to your neighbor? Even if they're not an immigrant, have you talked to them about what's going on? Because I've said it so many times, not today, but like diversity, which we so often tout, is not the same as community. And if you don't have community, diversity goes away because they divide us. And so if you're trying to get involved, the best way is to folks around you. And you all are obviously here. So you all are doing it with folks that share similarities with you, the African immigrant or diaspora experience, right? How do we do it in our own communities where there is a lot of diversity? Because I know some very progressive people where misunderstanding, even of things like different cultures, like they do fireworks at different times, they do noise at different times, the smell of foods, and those are all great things, but they can breed resentment and hate again, even in very people that think they're very like progressive, right? So the way that we do that, in my opinion, is to turn diversity into community, and that starts with our own communities, both physically and where we live, where we work, and certainly at the Capitol.
I think those are all really great points. Let's give them a hand. Attorney Adriana, as you talked about, definitely having the conversation about not just immigration, but also them dividing us, the hate that is causing. And that stems also a follow-up from the panel that we had earlier where they talked about you can't let hate be the deciding factor. You actually have to have those conversations. You have to open up. And a great tip that Representative Lynn said is like, we're coming together in this space because we're like-minded. We all have views. But have you talked to your neighbor today? Did you invite your neighbor? Even if it's something completely different, having that conversation. I do live in a diverse community. I do live in where fireworks are spread out all times of the week for no reason.
I used a good example.
Yeah, I had to learn. I was like, why are there fireworks on a Wednesday night? It is not a holiday. My kids are going crazy. But then you have that conversation and then you understand, okay, there's birthday parties, there's celebrations, and they shoot fireworks. That's it.
And you don't
You don't call the police. You have that conversation. I had it. And then I learned, okay, this is actually something that they're doing. This is part of their culture. And now you just learn, you accept it, you understand it. It doesn't get you aggravated, it doesn't get you irritated. Why? Because you had the conversation and you also had to have an opening, listening ear and sympathy. Because remember, you want them to have sympathy for your causes, your things. So listen, but having sympathy and understanding of the differences is really key. And as Senator said, Gabe said, get involved. Even if it's your local school charter, if it's your local community organization, join a board like AIM, join your community things, talk to Gwinnett County. They have a lot of different organizations. Talk to your local county officials, school courts, municipal courts, school districts. Start somewhere. Wherever your heart is, start there and become a voice, become an advocate, and then help bring it. Because eventually, we may not all have Senator Gabe's lineage of continuously moving up across several different things. Congratulations, sir. But if you still take a point and you still make an effort, even in your small space, I told my parents years ago, I will never live up to you, but I will make a difference in the space that I'm in. And that is it. And that is all you have to do to make a difference. Because eventually, one day, we will all be in spaces such as these or in rooms with such senators or representatives and being in that space saying, you need to hear me because I come from a community. I don't come from me. Because as our Haitian commissioner told us earlier, if you don't vote, good or bad for them, or you don't show up, I don't need to listen to you. You are one person who does nothing for me. But if you come and say, hey, I come from my community and my community's behind me, guess what? They start listening. They start having to open their doors because now you got more than one vote. Now you got more than one ear. And then they'll start being like, okay, so where do you want us to speak at? Where would you like us at your coffee chat?
Representative Lim and I, we have open door.
Yeah.
You can come anytime. You don't have to have your community behind you because there'll be too many. Just
Send one representative, but you get the point.
And that's how we know, we've talked about healthcare, immigrant. That's those with more power and those with the know-how to navigate these systems. Constituent services is the number one thing we do.
simple.
Because we're in the Capitol 3 months out of it. What are we doing the rest of it? We're trying to help our community, and it starts with knowing that they're there and making them feel like they can earn our trust, and then helping them navigate whether it's a small business credit or deed issues or voting. Like, I don't know how many people that this past that they're like, okay, we got to vote, but the ballot is so long and we don't know whom to vote for, right? So those are the things that we can do if we have those conversations. Just wanted.
And one thing else from the last panel talking about how do you get the young ones to vote? Well, you don't wait till they become adults. I take my kids, my wife and I, we take them each time we go to vote. When it was time for them to be voting, they still come with us. They voted. They have all left the house. I don't know why, but but they still come from wherever they are. One that lives in Kentucky hasn't changed his address yet. He still comes home during elections to vote. You inculcate that while they can still listen to you.
Yeah.
Once they have lost the ear to listen to you, you can't even drag them to the polls. So let's start early. Thank you.
All right. So, last question for the panel. We've talked about a lot of different things, and we understand the current culture and the environment we live in. But I want us to think for a second, looking ahead. For 5 years to 10 years, what do you think this looks like?
I will begin. I attend like probably a year ago the first statistics from Bank of America. The last one was in 2000, and this year they come out with these statistics, and that surprised me. And I see that Hispanics are just growing. They are beginning to be the biggest minority, is what I say. Then the mixing couples are increasing, or children are not growing up knowing the difference between skin color. The technology just eating everybody. And the way that they think, they're very different. And I'm agree with Senator. Because the future of the United States and the world is a mixing pot. Touch me what you say about race. You know, when I just came from Mexico to the United States because I married an American citizen, I faced the dilemma of what race I am. You know, I'm Hispanic white because my grandfather was from France, because the French invention for Mexico, for Cinco de Mayo. And then the other grandfather was from Spain for the conquistadors. And by the way, I have a grandfather from Japan for World War II, you know, and my grandmothers are all Mexicans. And so mixed with Hispanics. And then I married Michael that is white, you know, and part German or Italian. So I see, you know, who I am. And I have a choice not to answer the question. No race, because I mix it, or I don't know how you call it. And then you can you probably will think, what is this Hispanic is doing here in an African, discussion, you know? Well, my it's a third race in Mexico that is from Africa. A lot of the slaves come with the Spain conquistadors, and my grandfather was a black man. So the African Mexican history is in my veins. And then I find out that Gaspar Yanga was one of the libertadores in Mexico who found the first free men city in Americas. 100 years before here in the United States. So our history between Hispanics and Africans are getting together for more than 400 years, fighting for discrimination, equal opportunities, and more and more and more that we can think about it. So the future is being ruled by technology. The world is more closer than any generation in the earth. You can see things in minutes. What is happening in Venezuela from the earthquake? you can see the suffering of people. And the thing which touched me and motivated me to continue to this work and inviting the community, inviting the young people, is because I saw the pain, and the pain is universal. A mother who lost a child will suffer the same here in China, in Mexico, in New York, anywhere. And when I have a phone call and say, I'm being deported, I need you to pick up my children from the school. And I went to the school and my name is not there. And my only option is to wait into the bus stop, to wait for these children, to let them know that their life changed forever. Is when my heart beginning to be no smaller, bigger and bigger. And I think what is happening in the United States is touching our hearts and make us becoming a better people. And we need to see the things that make us together. When I went to a party from Asian community, because also one of my grandparents was from Japan. Yeah, the Yamanaka is the last name. So I can tell you the diversity makes us stronger. The unity makes us stronger. Because education, information make us more stronger. So it's why we are doing to educate our communities. And whatever we listen here, we need to multiply outside. And the next time that we get together, we need to have more people and get out with our circle. Hispanics or Mexicans, we're hanging with Mexicans and Hispanics. Blacks are hanging with blacks. Asians are hanging with Asians because we like our music, we like our food, because, sometimes it's fun to try new things and being in the place that they don't want you to be. Talk about these issues with people that they're wrong or they ignorance. They don't see more than a rhetoric or a tweet or a post. We need to think about integrate ourselves on the places that we think we don't fit, because we fit, because race doesn't exist. In biology, doesn't exist. All of us in 100 years, we will be white, all of us. And powder, probably white powder, because race doesn't exist. We attack segregation because we segregate ourselves. We need to get out and we need to speak out.
Where you think will be, Representative?
Well, before I delve into that, I wanted to, because listening here, everybody speaks with their own accent, right? I want to tell you what happened when I first was elected party chairman. I am Igbo, remember? From Nigeria. I got calls from all over the world where there were Nigerians. And the first question each asked me was, Chief, how did you do it with your accent? That's why I knew that this was a problem that needed to be addressed. Here was my answer. I told them, if you bring somebody, a white American for that matter, from New York down here, he or she would have an accent. You bring somebody from California down here, he or she would have an accent. Even neighboring Alabama, you bring it down here, they'll have an accent. Therefore, if you don't sound like me, you're the one with the accent. That's actually my belief. I so much believe in it. I so much believe in it. I retain this accent. It's been, mixed up a little, but I retain it because it's part of my identity. That is who I am, and I have to be proud of it. And it has not stopped me. I volunteered this story to encourage you to don't change and still move forward confidently. All right? Now, in the next 5 years, did you say you're going to see AI sitting all over here? But if we only will remember that out of many, we are one. You may be from the Hispanic community, I may be from the African, you may be Vietnamese, you may be whatever. We are still one race, one human race. We are one out of many. And if we can keep that in mind, and by the way, I don't know if they got what you were saying about no race. My take on that is that I have seen how marriages cross boundaries. We will not be alive. It's going to take a decade, a century or two. At some point, nobody will be asking for your raise because there won't be any. It's going to be all mixed up. It's going to be all mixed up. You understand? So we're dealing with it now because it exists. In the future, I don't think it may be existent because it would have blended so much that some people's nose may be short, others may be long, but they still be the same. All right? So remembering that out of many, we are one. In the immigrant community, please, there should be no second-class citizenship. If you are a citizen, go forward, do what you believe in. Don't think, oh, well, maybe because I wasn't born here. No, the people you read in the history of this country were not born here. George Washington was not born here, was he?
Nope.
Well, as a matter of fact, some of you immigrants here are better positioned because I don't see the immigration office that processed George Washington's papers when he got here. You know? So what I'm thinking is that at some point, and I say this as laying the foundation for my conclusion, okay? I see us at some point making the decisions that matter, but we have to get involved. We have to unite to make it possible. Thank you.
So I'll start with a cliche and then I'll break it down. The cliche is it depends on the people in this room and others like you. But let me break that down. We have a lot of positives and negatives, but I'll focus on the negative. There are a lot of global threats. AI is good, AI is bad. But, there are still nuclear weapons out there. We are not that far removed from a pandemic. This year is the I found it interesting. I did the math. It's the 250th anniversary of America, but it's also the 25-year anniversary of 9/11. It's a little poetic to me, but we also have elections this November. We have presidential elections scheduled in 2 years. And on average, 60% of registered voters in America vote, which means 40% don't. And so if you have the right and privilege, because I think it's both, to vote, making sure that you exercise that. And I get people who don't, I'll talk about that in a second, but that is important. And for those that don't have that right and privilege, you can still be a part of the conversation. And while these global and national issues may seem far removed, first of all, we know Georgia is a swing state. And then second of all, you can get involved locally. Because combining some themes here, we know that the metro Atlanta area is very diverse. It's not always a community. We're not always talking to each other, but it's very diverse, which means we have the bones of a lovely, beautiful society where we can all take our strengths and understand each other, take the time to understand, because it's a two-way thing. Like even with your fireworks, like in having those conversations with my neighbors, they'll moderate. They'll be like, oh, we understand that you might have asthma or something, right? So if you can be part of that, and if you can help people along the way with your power and privilege to navigate all of these systems, voting, small business, et cetera, locally around you, we can really be empowered and change the course of what this looks like in 5 years. Conversely, I know I represent a large immigrant community, large Latino immigrant community. I'm Filipino, but Vietnamese immigrant community, as well as African immigrant community. And we have people that are getting deported. We also have people that are just self-deporting because the current administration has made it difficult to access everything from healthcare to recently banking. This is a coordinated, concerted effort to deter people of immigrant descent, including legal U.S. citizens, right? And I know, I'll close with this. I know what it's like to feel, not my experience, what it's like to feel defeated. I became a citizen in 2007, and I voted, or tried to vote for the first time in 2008. And Georgia has a voter proof of citizenship law, which the Trump administration is trying to nationalize. Speaking of bureaucracy, I sent my, I was a citizen. I had my certificate of naturalization. A lot of people lose theirs. Please never lose yours or whatever. And I faxed it to Gwinnett County Board of Voter and Registration 5 times. I came from my immigrant family was like keep records. A lot of people don't. And it was still a barrier for me. And I remember thinking, well, if that was, I met the requirements and I did it 5 times. Like, people shouldn't have to do it 1 time, in my opinion, right? And then I was deterred for a number of different years from participating in the voter franchise. So I say all that to say, like, it should not be your burden. And there are circumstances where you won't want to talk to your neighbor or you won't want to vote. And I'm not invalidating any of that. But I do want to say that when you so feel empowered, because we all have our burdens, we all have our privileges and powers. When you do so feel empowered, look around you locally and work to empower others. It starts with knowing who's around you, maybe helping them with those things, participating in voting, and participating in that broader dialogue because they are trying to divide us this big day, and it makes it harder to do those things. So what does it look like in 5 years? You all have so much power truly to determine what that looks like.
All righty. I want to thank our panelists today. They all gave really good information and speeches, but I also want to, as he says, he doesn't like to use the words challenge. So I'm going to say charge. I'm going to charge you guys to take this forward, to take action, to do something, whether it's sharing your knowledge, whether it's sharing your things, visiting your local representatives, taking a step up, whether you vote, don't vote. Go say hi to your neighbor today that you don't know and say, hey, we've been here. I just thought I'd say, hey, finally, or something. Somebody you don't know, and keep that encouragement going, keep it going, because it really is on us to determine what the next 5 years will look like for our communities, for our children's, and for our society, because we are one human being as a race. And eventually, the races that we use to hurt each other, that they use to help segregate each other, that we use to hate on each other, won't exist because we will be intermingled, we will be interconnected. Adriana said, I've got like 6 different regions. What do I put on this thing? I'm mixed. I'm Latino. I'm not Latino. I've got Black. I've got French. And a lot of people have that. And it's just to like, eventually it will become too many that they will have to say, okay, we're just going to take these away. Because you can't keep putting all the possibilities that you want to classify us in. We're just a person. But it takes us, it takes initiative, it takes speaking up, it takes action, it takes get involved. So I charge you from this session, from earlier sessions, to continue and taking it forward, being a part, continuously participating in things from AIM or for your local communities, reaching out to your different representatives, states representatives, and senators within your community. But I want to say thank you. I think I'm supposed to turn it back over to my famous person who introduced me. I think you said something about lunch and hot food.
I think the media team will want to have pictures. So if you want to step up for pictures, that was really informative. And in fact, they have triggered me to turn the word diversity into community. That keeps resounding in my ears over and over and over again. Yes, yes, it is. Media, you're taking it? Okay. Yeah, hold on. Well, after this, I'll join you.